The moment Trump stepped onto the soundstage, something felt wrong. To him, he was grinning, glowing, waving like he was back on the campaign trail. But to the people watching, especially those behind the scenes, the atmosphere felt heavy. It was as if something electric hung in the air, not excitement, not anticipation, but the kind of silence you get before lightning strikes. He thought tonight was his moment to reclaim dominance, to bulldoze through facts with his signature. Chaos. But what he didn't realize was that Jasmine Crockett was already standing in the eye of his storm. And she wasn't moving. If you believe truth still matters, drop your country and city in the comments. Let the world know where justice still lives. This wasn't just another cable debate. This was a special 2-hour live broadcast titled America Crossroads, Truth versus Power. Filmed in a packed auditorium in Houston and streamed to millions across the country. The set looked like a coliseum curved seating, harsh spotlight, dramatic music swelling before each segment, cameras glided overhead like vultures. Every major network carried the feed. Social media was already ablaze with hashtags. Hashtag Trump returns. Hashtag Crockett claps back. Hashtag live meltdown incoming. Everyone tuned in expecting a fight, but what they got was a reckoning. Trump swaggered to his podium like a man entering a courtroom he thought he owned. His tie was redder than usual, eyes already flickering with amusement. Thrived on chaos, and tonight he thought he'd feast. His opponent? He scoffed internally. A junior congresswoman. A woman of color from Texas who talks loud but says nothing, he once muttered on Truth Social. He expected her to fumble, to trip over his accusations, to lose her cool, but he had no idea what Jasmine Crockett had planned, or what she'd already survived to get here. Jasmine stood calmly at her podium, as if carved from marble. No flash, no gimmicks, no dramatic gestures, just that unmistakable look in her eyes, the kind that said, "I've seen worse men than you." She wore a tailored black blazer, no jewelry, no distractions, wasn't here to perform. She was here to hold court. And not just for herself, for every woman who's been talked over. Every black voice silenced. Every truth twisted by power. Her mother was watching from home. Her staff had warned her not to go too hard. But Jasmine knew the stakes weren't just political. They were existential. And tonight, she wasn't pulling punches. The moderator welcomed the crowd, but his words faded into background noise as Trump leaned into the mic and fired the first missile. "Let's start with facts," he sneered. "If anyone on that side still believes in them. Congresswoman Crockett, maybe you can explain why your party has failed Black Americans more than anyone else in history. Or is it easier to just blame me, like you always do?" A ripple of laughter echoed through the Trump-heavy audience. He smirked, as if he'd already won. Jasmine didn't move. She didn't flinch. Her hands rested flat on the podium, her gaze locked on him like a sniper tracking a target. She let the silence sit. Stretch. Breathe. He leaned forward again, more aggressive. "Don't worry, I'll keep it simple for you. What exactly have you done to help the people you claim to represent, besides tweet, complain, and play the victim?" Time the crowd clapped. Chant started faintly. "Trump, Trump." The moderator looked uneasy. Cameras panned to the audience, some laughing, others silent, uncertain. The trap had been set. The temperature in the room climbed by the second, and then Jasmine moved. Just one breath, one step forward. Her voice didn't rise, sliced. "The only victim here, Mr. Trump, is the truth. And you've been attacking it for years." He blinked visibly. "You want to talk about what I've done?" she continued, pacing once before locking eyes with him. "I've helped rebuild. Schools your policies tried to gut. I've passed legislation that actually reaches families not your billionaire golf buddies. I don't grift. I don't dodge taxes. I don't silence whistleblowers. And I damn sure don't pretend to be a savior while burning the country down." The laughter stopped. One gasp, then another. The room tightened like a drum. Trump narrowed his eyes but said nothing. And then she hit harder. "You don't know me, Mr. Trump. You don't know my community. You've never walked through the south side of Dallas or seen a mother cry because her child couldn't afford insulin. But you know how to lie about it. That's your gift. You lie so much you think reality's just an opinion. You don't get to shape it. Phones lit up like fireflies. TikTokers whispered into live streams, "Yo, did you hear what she just said?" Twitter surged. Crockett just cooked him hashtag Jasmine vs. Trump. But inside the auditorium was dead silent. Trump tried to open his mouth. Jasmine wasn't finished. "You called me loud," she said, eyes blazing. Maybe the truth just echoes when it finally gets a mic. Somewhere in the back, a young girl stood and clapped. Others followed. Applause began to build. Not thunderous, but honest, unstoppable. Trump looked stunned. For the first time in years, he wasn't controlling the room. He was reacting, scrambling, and that's when the air snapped. The game had changed, because the moment Jasmine Crockett spoke, Donald Trump's mask started to slip. He didn't wait. The second the commercial break ended, Trump exploded into his first strike like a man chasing a headline, not a debate. "Here's what I can't stand," he thundered, pointing one thick finger toward Jasmine Crockett like he was summoning an execution. "We've got people, no experience, no record, no actual leadership, acting like they're experts. Embarrassing. You hear her talk, and it's all noise. No facts, just feelings." He spun to the audience with that classic smirk, the one designed to whip his base into a frenzy. Laughter cracked through the auditorium, forced and tribal, as if on cue. Jasmine stood motionless, not tense, not defensive. Still, Trump took that as a green light. He slammed the desk with his palm. This is the problem, folks. You give a little power to the wrong person, and suddenly they think they're president. I've built skyscrapers. I've run companies. Ran the whole damn country. What has she done? Write tweets and play woke bingo on MSNBC? The audience roared. Phones were already in the air. The conservative blogs had their headlines queued. "Trump humiliates Crockett on national stage. You want to talk justice?" Trump scoffed. "How about all those Democrats screaming about truth while pushing censorship, letting criminals walk free and bankrupting this country? That's your resume, right? You and your little fan club of Twitter warriors. I mean, are you even aware of what your own voting record says about you? Or do you just memorize hashtags and hope nobody checks?" He paced now, agitated and theatrical. "'Cause I did check. I went through every bill you co-sponsored. Every single one. You know what I found? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No wins. No results. You're a headline with no headline act." Jasmine slowly tilted her head, nodding confusion, but like a lion studying the prey that just stepped into her territory. Trump kept going, oblivious to the trap he was building himself into. "Let me be real clear for the viewers at home," he said, now staring straight into the camera, voice rising with self-righteous fervor. "This woman represents everything wrong with politics today. Loud, angry, uninformed, and obsessed with identity. They want to divide us with race, with gender, with lies. They want to tear this country down brick by brick. And if we let people like her keep talking, there won't be anything left to save." The crowd exploded again. But this time it didn't feel organic. It felt like noise trying to drown out something the room wasn't ready to admit. Trump was throwing punches, but they weren't landing. Not really. Then Jasmine breathed in. Just once, and when she spoke, the room snapped to attention. "Are you finished gaslighting America?" Her tone was razor-sharp but cold, precise. Trump blinked. The question was a scalpel, not a scream. "Because if we're comparing resumes," she said, stepping forward, "I built mine with legislation. You built yours with lawsuits. Silence? You talk about what I haven't done? Let's talk about what you have done. You walked into the White House and turned it into a marketing firm for your own ego. You silenced scientists, disrespected veterans, and lied to grieving families while you bragged about crowd sizes. You didn't just fail at leadership, you broke it on purpose." The crowd wasn't laughing. They were listening. "You say I haven't done anything for my district. I dare you to visit it. Walk those streets. Look those people in the... They don't need buildings with your name on them. They need food that's affordable and water that's clean. They need safety, housing, dignity. things your policies tried to erase. Trump shifted behind his podium. Let's talk. Qualifications, she continued. I've worked as a public defender. I've fought for people who couldn't afford a voice in court. I've passed reforms that kept single mothers out of prison for nonviolent offenses. I've stood in rooms where power tried to silence me, and I spoke anyway. She leaned in, her voice low, intimate, deadly serious. You've never known. Silence, Mr. Trump, because no one's ever told you no and made it stick. Now the audience was dead quiet. Not one clap, not one cough. It's just the slow realization that something irreversible had just shifted. She pivoted, facing the camera. And as for your little folder of failures, she said, referencing the stack Trump had waved moments ago, you know what that is? That's every time I chose people over politics. That's every time I voted against a bipartisan bill. That funneled billions to oil companies while cutting housing vouchers. That's not failure, that's integrity. Trump opened his mouth, but she wasn't done. You can mock my voice. You can insult my experience. What you can't do, not tonight, not ever again, is rewrite reality in real time. I came here ready to answer questions. But you didn't come here to ask them. You came to perform. Gasps echoed across the auditorium. Journalists furiously typed. TikTok creators whispered into their microphones. This is wild. She's dismantling him live. Jasmine turned back to Trump, almost gently. But performance has a short memory. Policy lasts forever. Trump's jaw tightened. The smirk was gone now, replaced by something unfamiliar - confusion. Then Jasmine delivered the line that would become the viral soundbite of the year. You've built towers? Sure. But I build futures. I don't bankrupt them when they stop clapping. The crowd erupted, not a polite wave of applause, but an uncontainable surge. People were standing, cheering. Even those who hadn't come to support her were clapping on instinct. The moderator froze, clearly overwhelmed. Trump looked dazed, like the ground beneath him had tilted without warning. Jasmine stepped back, calm again, letting the noise swell. And just as the moderator tried to regain control of the segment, she looked at Trump one last time and said quietly, this wasn't even the hard part. But no one, not Trump, not the audience, not even the viewers at home, was ready for what happened next. The silence was suffocating. Trump wasn't used to losing control of the room. Not like this. It's not to someone he had underestimated. His face twitched barely but to seasoned observers. It was the kind of twitch that meant rage was boiling just under the surface. His hand clutched the edge of his podium so tightly that his knuckles turned pale. Then came the laugh, a short, hollow bark that carried more venom than humor. Well, he snapped. Didn't know we were auditioning for a Netflix drama tonight. Someone get her an Emmy. A few hesitant chuckles rippled through the audience, but they were nervous now, shaky. Jasmine said nothing. She didn't move, didn't blink. Trump noticed. It made him angrier. You know, Congresswoman, he said, spitting the title like a slur, it's real easy to act righteous when nobody checks your own record. You stand up here, pretend to be the voice of the people, but let's talk about what you don't want them to know. He pulled a card from his inside jacket pocket, thin, white, with highlighted text. Let's talk about your luxury condo in uptown Dallas. Let's talk about your PAC donors. Let's talk about how you drove a Mercedes during the eviction crisis and gave a speech about struggling with rent. That's not courage. That's acting. The room gasped. Camera zoomed in on Jasmine's face. Trump smirked. Yeah, I did my homework, he continued, because hypocrisy always hides behind loud voices. You say you're for the poor, but you live like a lobbyist. You talk about truth, but you spin it better than CNN, so go ahead. Tell us how you fight for the people while sipping wine in a penthouse and blaming billionaires for everything. He slammed the card down like a gavel. This time the crowd reacted. Some gasped, some clapped, many unsure. The mood had turned jagged. Journalists in the front row exchanged wide-eyed glances. Twitter was already exploding with half-truths and out-of-context quotes. Hashtag Crockett Exposed was trending within minutes. And still, Jasmine didn't flinch. Trump thought she was cornered, that he had baited her into silence. But she was breathing. Slow, intentional, measured. Then she looked at him, not with anger, but with pity. "You know what's funny, Mr. Trump?" she began softly. "You spent all that time digging through my life, hoping to find something ugly, and the best you came up with was that I drive a nice car." The audience laughed, not cruelly, but honestly. Trump blinked. "You don't think I know how optics work?" she said, voice growing stronger. "You think I haven't been told? To tone it down? To hide success? To be more relatable? I've heard it all. And still, I never once apologized for earning what I have because I came from nothing. You inherited your millions. I fought for mine." Now the whispers began stronger this time. We people were leaning forward. "I grew up in a house where we had to boil water to bathe when the heater broke," she continued. "I worked through college, paid off my own student loans, became a public defender because I couldn't stand watching people rot in jail for not being able to afford bail. And you think a car negates all of that?" She stepped away from the podium, now hands out, fearless. "You know what's really insulting? Do you think people in the struggle don't deserve nice things? Do you think success has to be silent or secret or hidden in shame? I'm proud of what I've built. And I never stole it from taxpayers, lied about it on a financial disclosure, or wrote it off in bankruptcy court." That landed. Louder whispers now. Murmurs. A few affirmations. Trump's face was hardening. He tried to cut in. "You're dodging the point." "No, I'm not," she snapped, eyes blazing now. "You're trying to confuse people. Twist the story. That's your pattern. You take one piece of truth, wrap it in a lie, and hope the noise covers the rest. But not tonight." And then she pulled out her own paper. Just one sheet, folded thin. "This," she said, holding it. "Up is the receipt for a grant I secured for public housing in my district last year. $18 million. While you were playing golf, I was rebuilding kitchens for seniors who hadn't had working stoves in a decade." Boom. The audience froze. Trump's mouth literally opened and closed, words forming and falling apart before reaching sound. She stepped closer to him now. "Just a little. You said I live in luxury. You're damn right I do. Because I believe black women shouldn't have to suffer to be seen as authentic. I deserve what I've earned, and I don't steal it. I don't grift it. I don't lie for it. I work for it." Claps. Real ones. It's bursting from random corners. Not coordinated, not pre-planned. Spontaneous. Trump was losing the air in the room. Jasmine looked around, eyes softening for a second. "You want to humiliate?" "Me," she said quietly, "because it's the only move you have left. But I'm not here to play defense. I'm here to dismantle the lie that power only belongs to the loudest man in the room." Gasps. Standing applause from the upper balcony. The moderator looked stunned. He tapped his earpiece, as if confirming this was still live. And just when it seemed like Jasmine had delivered her final word, she turned back to Trump and whispered, but into the mic, "You should have researched my backbone instead of my bank account." He froze, completely, eyes narrowing. For the first time, he looked unsure, not just shaken. Scared, and the audience felt it. She walked back to her podium, smiling now. But the next move from Donald Trump would be his biggest mistake yet. No one saw it coming, not even the most seasoned political analysts. After Crockett's last blow left Trump seething in silence, something darker took hold of him, something more than rage. He leaned forward like a predator circling its prey, his fingers twitching as if wrapping around a weapon. But this weapon wasn't verbal venom or political clout. It was a trap meticulously rehearsed, custom designed to annihilate her. And in that studio-turned battlefield, under the white heat of the studio lights, and with America still glued to their screens, Trump smiled. Not a politician's smile. Cornered beast's smirk before the lunge. "Since you love pretending. To no policy." Trump growled with condescension as he whipped out a sheaf of dense legislative papers from beneath the desk. "Why don't you explain Section 702 of FISA line by line live right now?" His voice was heavy with theatrical smugness. "Come on, Congresswoman. Let's see if you even read what you vote on. Or are you just rubber stamping like the rest of your squad?" The room froze. Even the moderator blinked. This wasn't just a curveball, it was a loaded sniper round. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, notorious for its legal entanglements and national security gray zones. had tripped up seasoned lawyers and veteran politicians alike. It had been used to bait experts on live panels before. Crockett had just been challenged to unpack it, unrehearsed on air, with zero prep and millions watching. Trump leaned back, the document dangling between two fingers like a dare. "Tick-tock," he whispered, his mic still on. This wasn't policy debate. This was gladiatorial combat disguised in legal jargon. He was betting on confusion, on panic, on Crockett scrambling, stumbling, self-destructing. He wanted her cornered into intellectual oblivion, reduced to a meme, mocked into silence. But Jasmine Crockett didn't move. She didn't blink. Instead, she reached out slowly and took the paper. Her hands didn't tremble. She didn't even look at the words. Her gaze never left Trump's. And then she smiled. Not wide, not mocking. A razor-thin smile that said, "You've already lost." "I don't need to read it," she said calmly, folding the document in half. "Because unlike you, Mr. Trump, I actually wrote part of the amendment you just handed me." That single sentence hit like a grenade in the room. The silence shattered into murmurs. On social media, the live comment feed exploded. "Wait, what? Did she just say she wrote IT?" Crockett stepped forward, not toward the audience, but toward the camera, her voice steady, crisp, and surgical. "Section 702 has been abused to justify warrantless surveillance. I was one of the lead voices pressing for stricter limits during the Judiciary Committee markup hearings you clearly never attended, because you were too busy pleading the Fifth in a courtroom." Trump's face lost its smirk. She continued, flipping through the paper with ease. "This clause? I fought to strike it. That one? I helped reinstate it with bipartisan support. This line here," she tapped it with her nail, "was added specifically to prevent someone like you from spying on journalists." Laughter erupted. But it wasn't mean-spirited. It was thunderous relief. People weren't just cheering, they were howling. Studio staff exchanged stunned glances. The moderator looked down, unsure whether to interrupt the landslide Crockett had just unleashed. Trump flinched. His trap had collapsed in slow motion, and now he was standing in the wreckage of it naked, exposed, humiliated. But Crockett wasn't done. "I came here to talk policy," she said. "You came here to play games. But you forgot something." She held the paper up and tore it in two. "I don't lose two men who can't even finish a sentence without lying." Applause cracked through the air like thunder, the kind that doesn't politely end, but builds and echoes. She'd taken his challenge, turned it inside out, fed it back to him as proof of his own ignorance. Even the moderator leaned back, arms crossed, nodding faintly in disbelief. Somewhere backstage, producer shouted to cut to commercial, but it was too late. Crockett had just delivered a national civics lesson with a hammer and scalpel, while the supposed mastermind of traps stood speechless before her, and just when the audience thought it was over, just when the trap had already blown up in Trump's face, Crockett dropped the final bombshell. She turned back to him, voice like a blade. "You know what's funny? That's not even the section I'm best known for. There's a moment in every war, not a battle, but a war when the general realizes they've lost. Not because of a single shot or a decisive strike, but because of the silence that follows. In that moment. It had just arrived for Donald Trump. His once booming voice, which had roared over campaign rallies and cable news panels for years, now wavered. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat as the studio's lights burned hotter. Not because of the temperature, but because of what had just happened. Jasmine Crockett had unraveled his so-called unbeatable trap live on national television, and handed it back to him like a detonated grenade. Trump tried to laugh it off. A dry, hollow chuckle escaped his throat. "That was cute," he muttered, tapping his fingers nervously against the table. "But let's not get carried away. She rehearsed that. You can tell someone coached her. That wasn't real. But the camera didn't lie. And neither did the audience, whose silence had transformed into murmurs of disbelief and a few stifled claps. What had once been a set stacked against Crockett now felt like a jury inching toward a verdict. Trump sensed it, and he hated it, so he pivoted. "Let's talk about honesty," he snapped, "because if we're going to act like Jasmine Crockett, is the moral compass of America, then I've got beachfront property in Iowa to sell you?" Crockett didn't blink. Trump's tone was rising desperation disguised as confidence, but his eyes betrayed him. He was reaching, clawing for something to smear her with. Anything. Because deep down, he could feel the air shifting. He was losing. You ever notice how people like Jasmine, Trump continued, his voice thick with condescension,
Always.
show up when the cameras are rolling? But where are they when it's time to make real decisions? You think she's in those back rooms? You think she's built anything? Led anything? Crockett tilted her head, smiling faintly as if she'd been waiting for this exact play. Mr. Trump, she said, her voice like a scalpel, calm and cutting. I show up when it matters because I don't hide behind billion-dollar marketing teams. I don't outsource my legacy to lawyers and lobbyists. Build trust the old-fashioned way by earning it. The crowd shifted again. You could feel it now palpable. Trump could too. No, he interrupted, waving his hands, his voice cracking slightly. You talk real big for someone who's done nothing. You think talking fast and dropping statistics makes you smart? Anyone can memorize a few numbers and wear lipstick. That's not leadership. That's theater. Gasps. A few audible. One producer at the edge of the set visibly froze. Crockett didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, but she didn't take the bait. Instead, she looked directly at the camera. Not at Trump. Not at the moderators. At America. I didn't come here to play your game, Mr. Trump, she said. Came here to end it. And with those 8 words, something cracked not in Crockett's composure but in Trump's. He shot back with venom. End what? You think anyone watching believes you? You think anyone outside your echo chamber even knows your name? A nobody. And soon, you'll go back to being a nobody. But it sounded forced. The delivery lacked weight. Crockett didn't even dignify it with a reaction. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, voice low and measured. You know what terrifies men like you? Not loud women. Not defiant women. But women who don't need to scream to be heard. Women who let your own words expose you. Trump looked away, just for a moment. But it was enough, and then she delivered the kill shot. If I'm a nobody, Mr. Trump, then why are you panicking? That line hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Trump clenched his jaw. I'm not panicking, he growled. This is ridiculous. But the tremble in his voice betrayed him, tried to retake control. By changing the subject. Let's talk real issues. Not this nonsense. Let's talk economy. Let's talk law and order. Let's talk about the border. Let's talk about truth. Crockett cut in, calmly. Let's talk about what you said last week about the border. You claim the current administration is letting millions of criminals pour in. You repeated that 3 times on Fox. But the Department of Homeland Security's own data shows violent crime rates have dropped by 11.2%. This year on border arrests for criminal activity are at a 5-year low. Trump blinked. He hadn't expected her to bring receipts. And while we're at it, she continued, voice steady and slicing. You promised in 2016 to balance the budget in 4 years. Instead, you added nearly $7.8 trillion to the national debt. Your tax cuts for the rich didn't trickle down, they exploded upward. Those numbers, Trump stammered, reaching for his water glass, hand shaking slightly. You're twisting things. No, I'm quoting your own administration, Crockett said. Would you like me to pull up the documents? I have them saved, in case you forgot. And now the crowd was no longer whispering. They were watching intently. Someone clapped. Someone else followed. Not awkward, but stunned. Trump's face flushed. He reached for another line of defense personal jabs. You love to act like you're perfect, he sneered. Let's not pretend you haven't made mistakes. I've never claimed to. Be perfect, Crockett said. But I own my mistakes. You bury yours beneath non-disclosure agreements and bankruptcies. There was no laughter. It's just a heavy pause. One of the moderators tried to intervene, sensing the tension, but Trump blurted, This isn't a courtroom, you're not a judge. No, Crockett replied, her voice like thunder behind a calm sky. But the truth still holds you in contempt. That line echoed through the studio. Trump's hands were no longer animated. His shoulders had tightened. He looked smaller, not physically, but emotionally. The larger-than-life force had shrunk. Under the sheer weight of facts, control, Restraint 3. Things Crockett wielded like weapons. She had done what few had managed cornered. Trump without ever raising her voice. She didn't attack. She exposed. She didn't argue. She revealed, and the audience could feel it. The tipping point had arrived. Trump was unraveling. His confidence, once brash and unshakable, now looked like a man standing in a collapsing tower, refusing to acknowledge the cracks. One woman in the audience whispered, "She's ending him." A man nearby nodded, eyes wide. The shift was no longer subtle. It was seismic. Trump exhaled sharply. "This interview is a joke," to which Crockett, never missing a beat, replied, "No, Mr. Trump, it's history, and you're living through your undoing live." The camera slowly zoomed in on Trump's face. Twitching lips, blinking eyes. Silence. No more snark. No more deflection. Just the weight of a reality he couldn't spin, and Jasmine. She simply looked forward, hands folded, waiting. But this wasn't the end. Because the next revelation, her final play, wouldn't just shake the room. It would shatter what was left of Trump's armor. And when Crockett stood to speak next, no one, not even the cameraman, was ready for what she was about to say. No one in that room could have imagined what was coming. Just seconds after Donald Trump smirked and leaned back in his chair, tossing out a final smug insult toward Jasmine Crockett, something meant to bury her once and for all, something seismic. Shifted. The air turned electric. The crowd was silent, breath held, waiting for Crockett to respond to the former president's last desperate jab. But instead of fire, she gave him stillness. Instead of outrage, she offered calculation. She leaned forward with a calmness so terrifyingly precise it felt like the eye of a hurricane had settled on live national television. "You really thought you were going to end this on your terms, didn't you?" she said softly. "Let me fix that for you." Trump had made his move, loud, flailing, desperate. He laughed and rolled his eyes, comparing Jasmine to every angry woman on a failing morning show. The insult was cheap, performative, but it wasn't meant for truth. It was meant for distraction. Trump was trying to paint Crockett as emotional, unstable, and out of her depth, hoping the audience would retreat back into familiar biases. "This whole debate is pointless," he scoffed. "You just want to make noise, stir up drama. That's what you people do." But this time you people didn't mean what he thought it meant, because Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She turned his words into a mirror and aimed them right back at him. "Let's talk about drama," she said, standing up slowly. "You lied to the American people for 4 years straight. You manufactured chaos, and you profited off of it. That's not drama. That's destruction. That's what you brought to the White House, like it was your personal casino." The crowd gasped visibly, not because of the words, but because of how calm she was while delivering them. It was the terrifying calm of someone who knows exactly what's coming and knows their opponent has no defense. Trump blinked too hard. His face twitched in ways he couldn't control. And that's when Jasmine pulled the final receipt out of her metaphorical bag. "You want to talk meaningless?" she said, raising a manila envelope. "Let me show you meaningless." She opened it slowly. The camera zoomed in. It wasn't. Just a stack of documents hit with signed statements, financial records, and court exhibits, all dated, all verified. "This," she continued, holding up the pages, "is a breakdown of your hush money payments, every single shell company, every fake invoice. You called this a witch hunt? I call it a confession trail." Trump's mouth moved, but no sound came out. The documents had been rumored, but no one had ever shown them, until now, on national TV, with millions watching. And Jasmine didn't stop there. She read from them. Names, dates, dollar amounts. His signature, his lawyer's initials, the bank account transfers. "You called me loud," she said, "but these pages are louder than anything I could ever scream." The audience began to shift from murmurs to gasps. Even the moderators, once hesitant to take sides, were frozen, eyes wide. Jasmine's voice never cracked. Her hands never shook. "You lied to this country. You threatened judges, bribed silence, sold justice, like it was a reality show prize." She paused. And you thought you could talk over me and walk away clean? Trump tried to interrupt, but his words came out as jumbled half-sentences. That's not, they said, but Jasmine cut him off. The difference between you and me? She said, voice like steel. You hide. Behind lawyers? I am the law. And tonight, you've just been cross-examined by someone you couldn't buy, silence, or scare. The audience erupted. First in stunned silence, then in thunder. Applause cracked through the room like lightning, wave after wave of it. People stood up, some covering their mouths, others shaking their heads. Trump sank into his seat like a deflated balloon, blinking into the lights, stuck in a spotlight he could no longer control. The camera caught him, mid-glare, jaw clenched but powerless. The great performance artist of American politics had finally forgotten his lines. And Jasmine? She didn't even smile. She just lowered the papers, looked around the room, then directly into the camera. America, you just saw the truth. Unfiltered, undeniable, and unbought. The moderators tried to regain control, but the damage was done. Even the Trump-aligned panelists were suddenly, mysteriously quiet. Phones lit up across the country. Clips began uploading in real time. Headlines started to write themselves. But Jasmine wasn't done. She walked over to the moderator's desk, placed the evidence folder down gently, and said, "Put this in the record. Let the people see what he's hidden behind for years." The cameras cut to Trump one last time, and the expression on his face said it all. Not rage, not defiance, but panic. And that's when the real shock came next. The air was still humming from the verbal earthquake Jasmine had just dropped. But before anyone could process it, Trump, flushed, trembling, clutched the edge of the podium as though reality itself had betrayed him. His lips moved, but no. Words came out. And then, with a muttered curse, he stepped back from the mic, eyes darting like a man hunted. It wasn't the humiliation of being wrong that broke him. It was the unmistakable sound clapping, not polite, obligatory applause. No. This was sustained, roaring, undeniable. Standing ovation had erupted, not for the former president, but for the woman he tried to silence. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win a debate, she triggered a national exorcism of arrogance. Trump tried to speak against some final jab, some ego-saving quip, but the moment was gone. His words dissolved under the rising tide of support for Jasmine. One by one, even Republican-leaning viewers on the split screen began nodding, posting, retweeting. In real time, hashtags flipped. From hashtag Crockett exposed to hashtag Crockett crushed him to hashtag Trump meltdown. Even Fox News hosts were shifting in their seats, visibly struggling to salvage the segment. But Trump, he did something no one expected. He walked off. No closing statement. No rebuttal. No face-saving spin. It's just a slow, red-faced exit under the brutal glare of the studio lights. His mic was still on, catching the faint tremor in his voice. She set me up. This was a trap. And just like that, Donald J. Trump, the man who mocked, lied, belittled, and roared, left the stage without a single coherent defense. It was as if the lie finally ran out of breath, but Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't smirk or taunt. She stepped forward and for a brief second looked directly into the camera, not at the audience, not at the opponent she had just obliterated, but at the country. And she said what millions had been silently screaming for years. You cannot rewrite the truth. You cannot outshout reality, no matter how much money, media, or noise you hide behind. The truth always finds its mic. There was no theatrics, no dramatic point at the crowd, just calm, calculated fire in her voice. This wasn't about me proving I'm right. It's about proving that we all deserve better. Better leaders. Better debates. Better truth. In the back, an aide dropped their phone. The moment was so raw, it felt like church. But Jasmine wasn't done. She leaned into the raw wound of America's division and pressed harder, not to hurt, but to heal. We let people bully their way into power for too long. We rewarded volume over values. But tonight, we didn't clap because someone won. We clapped because someone finally told the damn truth. Cameras pivoted to the audience, grown men. Wiping tears, teenagers fist pumping like it was the NBA Finals, mothers holding their daughters closer. Something had shifted, not just in the room, not just in politics, in people. Then came the final blow, not to Trump, but to the culture that enabled him. I'm not here because I wanted to be famous. I'm here because I watched my community, my family, my future get laughed at, lied to, left behind. And if I have to stand alone with nothing but my voice, I will. Because silence is where they win. Collective silence swept the room, and for once, it wasn't fearful. It was reverent. It was the sound of reckoning. And that's when the real twist hit. Jasmine, instead of walking off the stage with the glow of victory, turned to the moderator and said, "I'm not done." The moderator blinked. "Excuse me? Want the floor?" "One more minute." Not for a rebuttal, for a warning. Granted. She turned back to the crowd, her voice now low and intimate. "If we let this kind of deception come back tomorrow, if we laugh it off, if we scroll past it, we're just as guilty. You saw the truth tonight. Don't let them edit it by morning." The journalist whispered, "She's writing history live." And then came her mic drop question. One that would headline every news outlet, TikTok recap. Again, political podcast for days. America, are you finally ready to fight for the truth, or will you let another lie take the wheel? The screen faded to black. If this shook you, don't. Scroll, share this video. Someone you know is still buying the lie, tag them, challenge them, wake them up. Because silence isn't neutral. Surrender.